the one that's always like
Parmigiano Reggiano. I am obviously from Italia. I can't handle her. She's too much. She does make very beautiful food, but she's very exaggerated about her Italiano accent.
Italiano and the murdering.
It's so much. It's so much. What you want to do is you want to cook the spaghetti. God, it's too much. No shade, but it's too much.
Yeah. Well, it's time for another film to table. We've watched another movie now that we've butchered.
Now that we've talked shit about somebody else.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. We haven't been introducing ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's do that.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
So I'm Eli.
Are you wearing a Goblin shirt on purpose? Or you just have that in rotation?
To be wearing
okay,
it today.
Just checking.
I didn't put it on before the movie.
That's true.
I put it on this morning.
That's fair. Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, carry on.
Sorry. I'm Eli.
Oh, I'm Denise.
All right. And this is Film to Table. Because we're going to talk about a movie. And then we're going to talk about...
Are we talking about ourselves for a second or not really?
No.
Oh, okay.
We'll do... This will be the...
Nope.
We're still learning. So we will
figure it out.
We will have made a little teaser.
You guys are on your own.
No, we will have already have made another teaser where we will talk about what this is, and then people can listen to that before they listen to this. So
Totally.
Who knows what episode this is, but that's who we are. So
Mystery. It's a grab bag.
Yeah. It's like a bag of spaghetti.
Ew. What?
Well, because we watched Dario Argento's Deep Red, and it was the first time for both you and I. I thought I had seen this movie before, but I guess not.
I think we've just seen so many clips of it from other, like those list shows of 100 best horror scenes or 20 best horror movies or whatever.
Well, I was very familiar with it. I thought I had seen it. And if I had thought I had seen it, then I would have thought that I had seen it when I was probably going to art school around the time that I watched Suspiria and stuff like that, when I was kind of getting into Italian horror, like in my early 20s, when I moved to the big city from small, small town.
You became big city mouse?
Yeah. Brought my bag and my Snoopy car. But yeah, this was a first time watch for both of us. And, I guess since we hadn't said anything just yet, this is considered one of, if not Dario Argento's apex or the best of his giallo movies.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts? Do you think that this is...
So this is going to be full of spoilers, right? Because I don't care. Because this was from like 1975 or something.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's like a year older than me.
Yeah. I don't give a shit.
Skip to the part where we talk about food in the last 20 minutes.
Links in the bottom.
Yeah.
It won't be in the bottom.
I have no idea how that works. I'll figure it out. I'll ask Julie or somebody.
No, so I was kind of, I probably should take some time to kind of digest this movie a little bit.
Meal.
It was a lot to chew on. Are we going to keep doing
yes.
puns? Okay.
Yep.
But I'll be honest, granted, I'm not super well versed in giallo films necessarily, but most of what I've seen from Argento I've enjoyed. This was a little bit harder for me to completely swallow, I guess. Like Suspiria, instant favorite. What's the other one? Tenebrae. That we watched. I really loved that one. That was so over the top that it was kind of part of the charm.
Right.
This one felt a little bit like it was 5 different movies in one. So it was harder to kind of be attached to anything that was going on.
Sure.
I wasn't a super fan of the main character. He was vaguely annoying.
Marcus.
Yeah, he was all right, I guess. And then the reporter lady that followed him around.
Gianna.
she was kind of a lot.
There were a lot of like Italiano names.
Well, there are. It's supposed to be in Italy.
It is.
Turin, I think specifically. But yeah, I don't know. It felt like they opened with the psychic, and then they were talking about, the very opening scene was somebody getting murdered, and what else was like? Oh, he briefly says that he's a jazz pianist, and that doesn't matter at all in the long run. I thought for somehow that was gonna kind of tie back in somewhere. She's the lady. She's a reporter, but she just kind of follows him around like a little lovesick puppy.
Yeah,
she's kind of annoying. Her car was super funny. The little tiny clown car that she had.
Charlie Brown.
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous. I kind of like that. But yeah, it seemed like there was kind of a mishmash of things going on. The doll stuff was very bizarre. I didn't dislike it, but it kind of felt like even after you knew, like in the end, after you knew what had happened, it still kind of didn't make sense.
Yeah.
I super loved that creepy walking doll, though. Honestly scared the shit out of me. It was really creepy.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. But like when you kind of look back and think on it, it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah. Now, I would agree with a lot of what you're saying. Like I liked it. And I'm no like Argento like expert in the world of like people that are like super into Argento. I mean, even though like I like watching Argento, but I know it's not something that it's a heavy meal. Like
it's a lot.
You can't eat this like all the time. And as much as I like it though, and I would still say that Tenebrae is like I think Tenebrae is like probably
I agree.
his best of all his movies, at least.
Well,
I mean, that's kind of just sort of my opinion from the standpoint of like, it's like that one really had me guessing. And this one, I was very like into it, and I was wanting to know where this was going. I wanted to know like how we were going to get there, where the conclusion, like I was very like wanting all of that.
Like it felt like they took a lot of time in certain places that in the end kind of didn't matter. Like that big house that he was in for like 10 minutes. But then it's like, oh, he didn't really figure anything out there. I guess like the drawing on the wall he ended up excavating.
Yeah.
Kind of told him something, but still not really. Because he still doesn't figure it out until the very end. So it kind of doesn't matter. I don't know. It's very strange. It felt kind of like when you're like 11 or 12 and you're trying to write your own story and like for a class project, and you have to write like a little novella, and you're just kind of making shit up as you go. That's kind of what this felt like. So like not in a bad way, kind of almost in an endearing way of like, oh, and what else can we put in here?
Sure.
You know, it'd be fun. A Steam clue.
Well, let's kind of walk through it, but I think we'll talk about some of the stuff that we did really enjoy. I mean, like I will say, of a lot of the Goblin scores,
super.
This one's
kind of highlight, honestly. For this movie, it was both distracting but also elevating. I don't know. There was something about it that like
it changed the whole movie when you start hearing. It changed the
vibe of everything. Yeah. And like it was it's funny because it's super distracting because all of a sudden like it seemed like they burst through the wall. It's like Goblin's here.
Yeah.
But then I kind of loved it. I don't know.
And then like goodbye.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back. We'll be back out. We're gonna take a little break. We'll be back in 20 minutes.
In like during a crucial tension-filled moment, we're gonna bust out some electronics.
I really like that, and I loved it. I think this. What I will say about this movie is like if there ever was, oddly enough, even though I mean I've only this is the first time I've seen it, at least that I remember. If somebody was to say like what is a giallo movie? What should I watch? I'd probably be like, you need to watch Deep Red because
interesting.
It actually has all the
the tropes.
Yeah, all the tropes and the hallmarks of like what makes a giallo. And I think part of that is like the kick-ass music.
Right.
the epic sort of locations, shots, the extreme overdubbing. Even though we watched, I guess, like the director's cut, which had some Italian in it, but that was specifically because they didn't have any audio tracks to go with it.
I'm actually kind of curious if I would have enjoyed the regular
Without
theatrical cut.
Sure.
Better, like, because it did feel like there was a lot of
That was a little
superfluous stuff.
Yeah, and that was a little jarring to be like in English, and then all of a sudden, like in
Italian.
the second part of a scene that had been edited out is now in Italian.
Because I feel like I was trying to keep track of like all the stuff, all the scenes where they were speaking in Italian, and I don't recall a whole lot of it being super pertinent to the story.
Yeah.
So maybe the theatrical cut would have been a little bit better paced.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah.
So, but yeah, that was one thing that I really liked about it was the Goblin music is just like
Badass.
aces. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's maybe one of the best. It's probably better than the movie itself, and then the movie complements the music. But in any case, so the movie starts in Italy, and I'll probably just skim over the highlights because it moved. I mean, I think. When I say like if you want to watch a giallo movie, this is the one you should watch because it is very much the whodunit, and
Yeah.
that is a big thing of obviously giallo is it is that element of like, okay, this is sort of like a mystery sort of thing, and you're going to kind of figure it out. And the movie starts with like a murder scene that is kind of strangely cut.
At Christmas. Right? Yeah.
And then it just kind of cuts to, I guess you're in this big auditorium, which by the way, that auditorium or
Is that
theater.
a church or something?
No, I'm pretty sure it was like an auditorium because those seats were very particular.
Okay.
But that was really pretty.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Like it's one of those, it wasn't a huge stage, so it's one of those kind of almost like a Shakespearean type theaters because like you couldn't do a giant like The Lion King in a stage like that. You could probably only do like
a few
actors. There were
stage.
3 of them on the stage, and they were almost taking up the majority of the stage. So it's kind of one of those one person.
It was pretty awesome.
It was really cool. Like if you really looked
rad.
at the seats and then like the trimming and everything in that cinema. It was very red. Like I did like that. The huge, immediate in your face like red, the red curtains and like
the seats. I think
the seats were very red. Everything was like very like stark contrast to the actual the people that were on the stage. And I thought that was kind of cool. And so it starts with a psychic woman, Helga, I think is what her name was. And I guess there's like some sort of symposium or something where there's like some sort of professor or something that's working with this woman, Helga, and she's like a clairvoyant or a psychic, I guess, or she's like
she can kind of read minds. But she's not the kind that can tell the future. Right. She can just kind of feel the vibes.
Yeah, like I guess she can feel your, I don't know if it's personality or something. I don't know,
like
but
aura or something.
Yeah, because she calls out one guy and he's like, "Oh, you're like holding keys in one hand and you're sitting and your name is so and so." And it was very like
it was very I don't know what the rules are for her power, but on the one hand, it was super accurate when she called out that one guy. But then she kind of felt like there was the murderer in the room, but she couldn't figure out who it was or
which was kind of
they looked like. It was interesting.
It was an interesting way. I mean, that was like a very like Italian giallo sort of way of starting off a movie of like, hey, here's like this sort of mystical.
Yeah, kind of paranormal. Like,
just sort of
flavor.
Yeah, which was just, I mean, I kind of like that because, it's just, I think when it comes to these movies, like the giallo movies, if you're not along for the ride from the onset, then you're just going to be like, what is this?
Yeah, you're
What's
just going to
going
be
on?
lost the whole time.
You have to have like a level of artsy-fartsy, I guess, that you want to be open and willing to watch a movie like this. Because if you're going to want to watch like this is no Point Break, and this is no like Commando or anything like that. Like this is like not very straightforward. Like you kind of have to really be paying attention.
You gotta stretch a little before you get
right.
into it.
It's almost like you gotta be like some of the investigators in a lot of these giallos with your pen and paper of like, okay, I think it's this person, and this person looks like this, and this person looks like this.
Yeah.
And so, but I thought that was a good like intro in the sense of like just kind of kicking things off. And it starts off with Helga, like, and like you said, she can sense that somebody has trauma or something in the room, and they have been involved in a murder or some sort of murder past or something, and so somebody leaves the room, and this Helga woman starts having like really like, it's almost like she's having panic attacks, but it's because I guess she's feeling the pain,
the murderous intent.
Yeah, because she says she's feeling like stabbing or like some sort of. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
she's
she
like,
just freaks out.
She's like, it feels like a thorn, and I'm like, I mean that. It didn't seem like it would be. You're very sensitive if it's
close
just,
enough.
Yeah. So then we're introduced to Marcus shortly thereafter, and like you said, there's like this little jazz band kind of playing thing there, and at the university.
Oh, that's the part that I thought was maybe a church. It kind of looked like a church where they were rehearsing.
But they were university.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because he was saying something about...
It was cool, but it was weird.
He was saying something about how he was teaching while he was there. But yeah, that was very strange. Yeah. And then that dialogue was also very strange of like, jazz music needs to be like sleazy, like... Yeah. Like
weird and gross.
Like a woman of the night. I'm like, wait, what? Like
what's happening?
You're describing
what are you guys
playing
doing?
Sloppy jazz? I don't know. I don't know what's... I don't know. That was weird. That was an interesting way to introduce Marcus to the whole sequence. So that from there we find out, or we see that Helga, who I guess is back at her flat in wherever they're at in Italy, is in her flat, and somebody is in the room with her. And this is where the very giallo sort of aspects of it come in, because
the gloved hands,
which is like very much, man, those were really nice gloves too.
They were really nice gloves.
They had like the
zipper on top
with a little like metal thing on them.
Yeah, it's real nice.
And so at the same time, Marcus is walking, I guess, back to his apartment, which is where I guess Helga is staying as well.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. Yeah, they were neighbors.
They were neighbors.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he's on his way back, and we cut back to the scene where we see Helga being attacked and brutally murdered with like what do you call those butcher, like the big,
like a cleaver?
Yeah, it's like a big ass cleaver too.
Yeah. Very inefficient tool for that.
Yeah, it was very excessive. But so the cleaver comes out and kills Helga, and then Helga makes her way to the window.
Just try to wave down help.
Yeah, just as Marcus is turning the corner of like a really awesome.
It's like a plaza. That's incredible.
That's what I'll say about like this movie. Which, I mean, so just to be clear, like I liked the movie. I thought it was good. But I don't think it's like his best. But I loved the scenery, the shots, like. It made me want to go to all those places. Yeah. So he's walking in that giant plaza, and then I thought it was really interesting. There were a couple times that I made a note of it, but, and I don't know if this was intentional, but like in the background, there's like a diner or something that was called like the Blue Note.
The Blue Note, I think.
Or something like that. The Blue something.
I think it was supposed to look like that painting.
Yeah, from Nighthawks.
Nighthawks, yeah.
Which is like
pretty
one of
sure
my favorite
it was
paintings.
super intentional.
Yeah, because everybody inside looked very American, which was kind of. But it was also interesting that it didn't look like anybody in there was really moving.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
So, and I bring that up because there's another scene later where Marcus walks into frame, and he's kind of. I forget which scene it is, but he walks into frame and there are people in the background and they are also not moving. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, it was really neat because I was, for a minute there, it seemed almost kind of dreamy. And then I was like, is that woman in the background like moving? Because she was holding a drink and she had a cigarette. she was in this like mid walk pose, but not moving.
Yeah.
And then there were people in the foreground that were smoking and also like doing things, but also not really making big movements.
Right.
They were just very like intentionally, like kind of like
statue almost.
Yeah, but not completely
like living statue.
Kind of. Yeah. So yeah, Marcus is making his way back to the apartment and he sees Helga almost get like decapitated because she gets pushed out a window, or she gets cleavered.
She gets cleavered, but then she kind of runs around and then she gets to the window and I think the murderer like smashes her against the window and the window breaks. So she kind of falls onto the shards of the window.
Her neck falls onto
so she kind of gets stabbed in the neck with the glass shards. It's really messed up.
Right. It was pretty hardcore. I was just like, holy cow.
That was a lot.
And so then I guess from that point, like the police show up after she's been killed. The one thing I was going to say though, again, kind of going back to if you want to watch a giallo, when that woman is on the phone and like the killer's in the room.
Oh yeah.
That whole sequence was really cool. Like
it was.
The shots were really neat. Mm-hmm. Like they did a lot of those extreme angles, sort of like, I think that's part of what makes, like, I think that in some ways this is where sort of the artsy fartsy side of things kind of comes in, because I think that some of those shots are extreme, but it kind of adds a little bit to the tension if you're wanting to really allow that to build up. It
does. I think it like kind of emphasizes kind of the campiness a lot of it too. Which I don't know, it's kind of funny because you would think it would break the tension, but it kind of helps enhance it a little bit. It's just all of his use of like kind of light and shadow and crazy colors. It's almost like you're not really sure where to look for certain scenes, and it makes it kind of more tense.
Yeah, there's a lot of stylistic choices that are made in that sequence, and that's kind of why I mention that, because like the way that she's framed in the shots, like she's at the very corner of the frame and it's like a real wide angle, and like you get a real I don't know, like it just adds that I don't know, like a feeling of anxiety or something that's like, you know, you're kind of like looking around. But like you said, some people would see that as very campy, and it's like almost like a trademark of the giallo sort of look.
Yeah.
But it's also, the other side of that is like it's a very artistic and artsy choice. And I feel like it can add to it if you want to be like I enjoyed those sequences. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like I loved like that whole scene where before the killer comes and gets her is very long and it's a little unnecessary, but I like it because it adds a lot to these sorts of movies but it has to be done really well. And I think that's why you can say Argento is a master, because those shots don't seem like a waste.
No.
They just seem like, okay, if I was in an editing bay, and this movie's like 2 hours, if I needed to trim down a little bit, like somebody would probably be like, oh, you need to cut that sequence out. But that's like an important part of the sequence of the whole movie, is just the whole idea of a killer kind of being there and around.
Yeah.
That's like, if you don't have that, you almost don't have the giallo aspect of the whole thing.
I would almost argue that Argento feels more successful as like a visual storyteller in that sense than he is like, because I know he wrote or co-wrote this movie, I think.
He was a co-writer, yeah.
And I don't, all the dialogue was very clunky.
Yes.
And did not flow very naturally.
Yeah.
So
not a strong point.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, like if I would be curious to rewatch this on the, like I was saying earlier, on the theatrical version, because the director's cut doesn't really add a whole lot as far, like if anything, it threw more unnecessary dialogue.
Yeah.
That made it kind of emphasized how not strong it was.
Yeah, there were a lot of sequences for sure that were kind of like, they almost like, you just kind of, all you ended up doing was making Marcus, the main character, seem more like a goofy, chauvinistic asshole.
Yeah, like else. It was harder to root for him because he seemed like such a dick.
But another standout. So the cops show up and they, I guess they show up because Marcus has called but another trademark, I guess, of giallo is like the cops show up and the cops are always the kind of
bumbling,
and also like they're either like there's always the one guy who's super into it, and then there's the other guy that's always just like a real asshole.
It's usually the guy in charge that's the biggest asshole.
Well, and like in this case, we had the guy eating the sandwich
like during right in the middle of a crime scene.
Yeah, and he's giving Marcus shit about like, oh, you're a what now? Like you're a
pianist. So that's not a real job.
Yeah, so you're not making any money.
You're homeless, right?
Yeah. So what do you actually do? And he's like, I
literally teach at the conservatory.
And he's like, oh man, what a waste. He's just like kind of being a real asshole. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny. And it was weird too. Like he's eating like a white bread sandwich with no crust. Like it was a perfectly
you're right.
Perfectly cut.
It just like a ham sandwich or something too. It was
in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, interesting. But sure, I guess.
And then somebody busts out a thermos of like espresso to give a little cup to everybody. Yeah,
that was really they were interesting choices there for sure. But yeah, so it's funny because like I guess at that point, and I guess prior to that, like Marcus, I guess he's taken to the police station to be questioned, and then he gets let go. I guess a couple hours later, he kind of comes back, and he runs into his buddy Carlo, who's plastered drunk out in the plaza.
Yeah, so it's established fairly quickly that he's a drunk. In the worst way possible.
He's pretty messed up. Like he's got all kinds of problems, and I guess he's in the band. Or I'm not sure if they're a band or...
Well, he says he teaches at the music conservatory.
With...
which I guess they have a band to practice the music.
I guess. That's not really how that works, I don't think.
I guess in Italy it does.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, he's basically... It seems like he's slightly jealous of Marcus because he's like, yeah, like you... Like you're really into it because of the art, and I'm doing it because I need the money, and I'm a drunk, and I've got all kinds of problems. So
he has a whole interesting backstory. Marcus does.
Yeah, it's just it's very strange. That whole, and again, that was maybe more the director cut because they were speaking a lot in Italian.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know if that was actually in the original cut, but it seemed like that was kind of.
But yeah, the point was that to show that Carlos was like a severe alcoholic.
Yeah.
And pretty messed up about something.
Yeah, and so, and this is where I kind of get my notes are a little. I get a little off on where we kind of go from here because it's interesting because it's almost like the police is like, whatever. And Carlos is like, hey, you need to not get involved. Like, you're a musician. And Marcus is kind of like, yeah, but that was like my neighbor. And
right. And he actually like saw it happen.
Right. And so he like cares and wants to, like, all of a sudden he like becomes Kojak or like,
yeah, he
like,
just
decides that he's going to.
I mean, in classic, giallo fashion, he just decides he's going to go ahead and solve this murder.
Solve the murder
because the cops are useless.
Right. Or they are kind of like, whatever.
Yeah. And
so he goes at that point on this, the majority of the movie at that point is really him going from like location to location. Yeah, finding clues and trying to find out more about the past, I guess, of Helga. So he meets up with I guess whoever Helga's like professor person was that he was working with. I forget his name.
The guy that was hosting the talk, I guess, or the Q&A that she had for being a psychic.
I don't remember what his name was. But so they're kind of like walking through, like he's trying to figure out like, okay, well,
like who would kill her?
Like,
why would this happen?
And he kind of he sort of runs them all through the fact that it's like, oh, well, she saw somebody and we saw somebody moving around, but we couldn't actually see who it was. But that leads them that's like the first clue that leads them to, I guess. Actually, I don't remember where that actually leads them. But
is it the bathtub one?
That leads.
Is that where?
That's like the second or third thing, because that leads them to. There's like a woman that I think was Rafi. I think was the name of the woman. Or no. So he's trying to find his buddy Carlo.
Right.
Because he's trying to ask him about something.
More. Yeah, he was trying to get more information to see if Carlo could remember the night of the murder. Because Carlo was there in the plaza. He just plastered drunk.
He was drunk, yeah.
And he heard the scream also.
Right.
When Helga was getting murdered. So he wanted to see if Carlo saw anything, even though he was drunk. So he goes to Carlo's apartment, but it turns out he's living with his mom.
Right.
So he meets the mom,
who's like a crazy woman.
And yeah, she used to be an actress, but she's also very I don't know, she's kind of out of it.
Yeah, she keeps
asking him, are you an engineer? And he's like, no, I'm a pianist. Like, an engineer that's also a pianist. And he's like, okay, I'm just gonna go.
Yeah, and she's like, look at all my pictures of when I was in the talkies and the picture films. And he's like, that's real nice.
I'm gonna go.
I'm gonna try to get out of here. Where is Carlo?
I'm looking for your son. He's missing.
And he eventually finds where Carlo is, who is with I guess like
I believe it's like he's his transvestite lover.
Yeah.
Which nobody knew, I guess, or was kind of a surprise. But kind of interestingly and impressively, they did not make a big deal out of it in the movie, which I kind of loved.
Yeah, no, it was just like, hey, I'm just staying with like my one night, or I guess not a one night stand.
Yeah, it sounds like they have a thing going on.
Like a little fling.
Yeah.
I guess just to stay away from his mom's house, because his mom was crazy.
Yeah, obviously nuts.
Yeah, so
very much what is it, Mrs. Bates type.
A little bit, yeah. More like Mommy Dearest.
Oh yeah, Mommy Dearest.
Like very like I was in the picture shows, kind of, sort of look. But yeah, so I guess he finds Carlo, but it's not really. Doesn't really lead to much.
Yeah, because Carlo was like plastered drunk.
Yeah.
So he can't give him anything.
And so that, I want to say then they somehow, and I don't remember.
He's been in contact with the Gianna the whole time, and she's doing some digging up too.
Oh, that's right.
That's how I think.
The
reporter or investigator. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, she just works for the paper. I don't know.
I guess.
She's a journalist. But
I don't. Like, she doesn't actually look like she's writing anything. She just kind of wanders around.
Yeah.
She sits in a noisy office once or twice.
But yeah, that leads them to trying to find this woman, I guess, who has like a connection, I guess, to them. And I don't remember exactly what the connection was.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Rigetti was the woman. And
Amanda Rigetti.
Yeah, so he figures out like, okay, I need to go see her because she has some sort of connection to maybe like Helga or some of the people that are involved in that. And so he goes to go talk to Rigetti. And before he can get there, the killer has made his way to the home of Rigetti and kills her. In a very again, very giallo fashion, like
super
violent, very slow.
Yeah.
Like it took forever, but at the same time, it was very dramatic.
It was also very, disturbing. That kind of point of view killing actually made me think a lot of that movie. The one movie that we watched, was it Maniac? Is that the name of it? Was? Like
first person.
First person watching somebody kill somebody else. It's very disturbing. And I know it was very kind of artistically done with this particular film, but it was still kind of weird watching somebody drown somebody else. Kind of gross.
Yeah, it was really but again, it kind of goes back to like you see the gloves. Like it was almost like a first person shooter. In that you could see the gloves like right in the camera in sort of the view. And again, a very like artistic sort of choice. But yeah, the drowning sequence like goes on for a really long time, and well, it's not even as much. I mean, it is a drowning, but it's hot water, so it's actually like not only is it a drowning, but it's like
scalding her face.
Yeah,
also.
so by the time she's drowned, she's also like blistered in the face.
Yeah, it's pretty grody.
Yeah, but during that whole sequence, like
does he stab her also? I think he does something else to her. I can't remember. Maybe was it a stabbing? Well, because like the bathroom is covered in blood, so she
so that's right. There was definitely some knife play, for sure. Because you're right. Like they had to clean up all the blood later.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I mean again cheesiness, but I mean I don't know. That's what I like about if you're gonna have some cheese with your giallo, your Italian giallo. I want lots of cheese because like the whole
just like an Olive Garden. Keep it going.
Yeah,
just keep it going
because you just until they tell you to stop. You just keep that
Olive Garden cheese going.
Yeah. But yeah, in a very like cheesy way, she writes on the wall with her finger because of all the steam of who the murderer is.
That made me mad because all she ends up writing is, the person who killed me is ... Not all that, but basically that's what it was.
Sure.
And she doesn't actually write anybody's name. Like you couldn't, your last dying breath, you could have just, I don't know. It would have been, I don't know. It was so annoying for like somebody that, like I love murder mystery type things. So I like kind of being there and trying to be clever and like looking for the clue. And the clue is nothing. Because she didn't write anybody's name. The steam stuff I thought was so clever, and it could have been like such a great device to leave a trace behind, and they did nothing with it and made me mad. I mean, obviously it would have been like the end of the movie if she wrote his name, but still, like it was such a cool idea, and they didn't do anything with it. Like,
so you didn't like the Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where it's like they come up and he says like, and then he went,
yeah, it was basically that.
He's like, no, he actually wrote out, yeah, I mean, but I agree with you, like very.
That made me just, that kind of annoyed me.
Cheesy, well.
Because it was such a cool device. Like, even if, for example, like she didn't know the name or whatever, like, I feel like it could have been a much better clue. Like it didn't even have to be like if she didn't know the person or she didn't know the name of the person, she could have written down a clue somehow, and she didn't. And that Steam device was for nothing, and it made me annoyed.
I could see that. I mean, and that's fair. I think totally fair comment. I think, I mean, like I said, I like the setup and the device of it all because then the clue. It's like you like as a viewer, and I guess as like if you were reading a book or if you're kind of following along, right? Then it's like, oh, you know that the clue's there, and then like, are they going to be able to realize that it's the steam that you need to do? Which
right,
it's very cheesy when it happens, but I think it's part of the charm of these particular.
No, I totally bought into it. Yeah.
Whereas I think like in other movies, like maybe not so much. You know, it would probably be like I don't know. Like, I just feel like it would be people would just be like, okay, come on. Like, really? But I don't know. I like that. And so anyway, so Rigetti is killed. Marcus is there. And then Marcus realizes like, well, shit, now the cops are going to think it's me.
Yeah, because I'm going to call it in again, but they already suspect me for the other thing.
Yeah. And they were already like wondering where I was. And they were like doing all this stuff with me. And now I'm going to be calling in this woman's death. So
I'm just gonna get out of here.
He actually doesn't call it in. And I think the maid or the housekeeper woman.
She's a housekeeper, and she finds the body the next day.
Yeah, and she calls that in. But yeah,
he left fingerprints all over the place. But whatever.
Yeah, and so after that. I kind of forget, or it was kind of hard a little bit to follow along, but then there's the mention of like the house, I guess as he's doing research, there's a house that's related to.
I can't remember how that tied in either. He just sees it in a book.
Well, he's researching, I guess, like maybe the history of, like, I don't know if it was the history of her or that area or whatever, but in a particular book, he comes across like an image of a house that I guess was owned. Well, actually, I don't think it says who owned the house.
No, but it's important for some reason, and I can't remember why. So he goes about trying to see if he can find the house, and it's actually really clever how he tries to do that is by looking at the vegetation around the house, because he notices that it looks kind of weird. It doesn't look like anything around here. So he goes to different like plant nurseries to see if they can recognize it. And funnily enough, people are like, "Oh, that's not
super exotic."
Yeah, it's not a native plant. It would have had come from what they say, like, was it Morocco
The Canary
or something?
Islands.
The Canary Islands. That's what it was. They were like, it doesn't grow here. We don't sell it, but check the other plant nurseries, which he does, and that in that manner, he kind of ends up finding where that house is. He finds the landlord for the house. Because it looks like the house is empty and it's for sale. So he finds whoever posted this for sale sign. They give him the keys. And that was the other thing too, like the landlord or whatever's kid, super creepy, very much kind of like that joke of like, oh, the harbinger to the cabin in the woods kind of trope of like, oh, creepy kid that's just like warning you away from the creepy shit. But you don't listen, so you're going to go do it anyway. But like, what was the point of her? Like, it doesn't actually say, she doesn't have a connection to the house. She doesn't have a connection to anything. But she's obviously very creepy and fucked up because she like tortures lizards or something. I don't know. It was a very bizarre, tiny side story.
Well, it's another almost like giallo trope of having the weird kid sort of brought in. That's just like, okay, like weird.
Just make everything weirder.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also slightly disappointing that didn't go anywhere. I was kind of hoping a little bit for more creepy children if they were going to go that direction. And then
it leads Marcus to the house, which they keep mentioning, or everybody mentions, like, oh yeah, we know that house. That house is haunted. And there's a lot of talk about this haunted house and like, but there's no real like reasoning or exactly what or why it's haunted or whatever. Just that, like,
just like kids like stay away from it. Like there's an urban legend.
Everybody
around.
Knows it's haunted.
Yeah, don't go in there because it's all fucked up. Also, it looks very condemned. It looks like it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah, they haven't been able to like. So he finds the house and the owner through the nursery because the nursery guy is like, oh yeah, I ordered those plants for this person. I have the invoice and this is the name of that person. So he finds that person. Person still owns the property, but they don't live in it. They're just like, oh yeah,
they
like
just have the keys.
If you want to check it out, like we can set that up. Which sort of leads to this like sort of mystery unraveling of finding clues inside the home.
Takes way too long, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Awesome house though. I would love to live in a house that looks like that.
I don't know if I would. That house is creepy.
Pretty dope. Huge, giant glass windows, very intricate designs. There's a lot of plaster work. Really pretty, really ornate. Definitely haunted.
Super cool.
Yeah, super rad.
So he finds more clues, and we won't get into all the particulars. I guess like the ending's a little strange because it kind of bounces between a couple things as Marcus is trying to narrow down things and get his clues in order to figure out who this is, and then that also brings back the professor guy. I forget his name, but the professor guy who was with Helga at the beginning is also, I guess, he's also trying to help, and he goes and I don't know what his tie is to Ragetti, but he goes to the home of Ragetti.
I think it's because Marcus tells him about what happened there.
Okay, yeah.
So he goes to investigate because Marcus isn't going to go back there in case the cops are there.
Right.
So Professor Guy ends up talking to the housekeeper that finds the body, and he's the one that figures out the steam clue that leads to nowhere.
Well, he makes it sound like he knows actually who the killer is, but
how?
I don't know because they don't really
get it.
I don't know if they really either. Maybe they just didn't show the whole thing that she wrote before she died or whatever. Because he gives this assumption, or he gives this impression that he knows who the killer is. And that's why he runs off.
That makes more sense. That makes me less mad if that was the case.
I think that's what the case is, because he runs home. And of course, this is pre-internet, pre-phone, because remember, he tries to call Marcus, but Marcus isn't home yet.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Because Marcus
is driving on his way back
from the haunted house place or whatever. The professor guy is at home and is writing up all his notes and realizes what's kind of going on, which leads to one of two of the most iconic, and I'm familiar with these, but one of the two most iconic scenes of this movie. Where the professor guy is in his study and he goes and fixes himself some tea, and he comes back to his desk, and I guess he's got his notes, and he's like, I guess he's maybe going to try to call back Marcus, but he hears like a noise, and he hears somebody whispering in the background, and then just out of nowhere, a fucking robot mannequin doll thing.
So creepy, actually.
Like comes charging at...
Yeah, just kind of like rolls like super fast right up to him. Which super creepy.
Not really explained.
Kind of out of nowhere. Don't really know what it was supposed to do. But yeah, kind of, it still made my stomach fall to my butt because it was really scary.
Yeah, I have to say, it was a very like... Man, if I had seen that as a kid, or if I had seen that when I was
nightmares
younger,
forever, nightmares
that is some
for years.
Extreme nightmare. You know what it reminded me of? What are the books you used to read?
Goosebumps.
Wasn't there like a?
Yeah, there's Slappy, the mannequin.
It looked like that.
Yeah, the ventriloquist dummy is what it is. He looks very much like, actually somehow even creepier than a ventriloquist dummy. Because it's like upright and it stands on its own.
Yes.
I don't know. It was really fucked up.
It was super fucked up. Like I really want to know how they made that. I really want to know how that whole sequence.
Yeah, because it made it
together.
They made it look like it was a robotic kind of device.
Yeah, because the professor guy like
he smashes
it in the head, and
it looked like they had clockwork inside.
Yeah,
it's very bizarre. Never once explained where it came from, or who built it, or why it was there.
Yeah, or who's the mastermind behind building clock robot things or whatever. Yeah. But then shortly thereafter is killed by the giallo killer, who is basically that mannequin thing was a distraction, and then he gets killed. Which I don't think they ever. I don't even know if Marcus even ends up knowing that guy gets killed.
I don't think so.
Like.
Not on screen,
because we're kind of already towards the end of the movie at that point.
Yeah,
and I guess that the professor guy was killed because he obviously knew who the killer was, and so Marcus in one last, he finds a clue in the haunted house earlier, which is like some painting or drawing on the wall, of like a child like stabbing.
With somebody stabbing a man.
Right. With a Christmas tree in the background.
Right.
Which mirrors the opening sequence of the movie.
Right.
But we don't know who that is. And since he sees that.
And then he finds a secret room, right? Where there's like a dead body, like a mummified looking body with a Christmas tree next to it. Do you remember?
No.
Or was that later?
That's later. So he finds the drawing, but then he goes back. I guess he goes back to talk to the landlords or the people that own the property.
Oh, right.
And the little girl has a similar drawing.
That's right.
On the wall, and he asks like, "Wait, so where did this drawing come from?" And creepy girl is like, she didn't want to give up the goods, but then she admits that I guess she got in trouble at school, and so they had her cleaning up some area with the archives, and there was that drawing was in the archives, which is like another like long roundabout sort of clue.
Yeah, it was super convoluted way to kind of figure it out.
To get you all the way back around to find out that, okay, so now he knows. They go to the school where this drawing is, that somehow they keep kids' drawings from 20 years prior. But they find the drawing, which is the Christmas drawing, and I guess it has the name of the girl in the house or something, or it has the name of the parent or something on the back of the drawing, and so he goes back to the picture that he had earlier of the house, and realizes like, oh, wait a minute, like this is the correct house, but the picture is different than the house itself, because there should be a window here.
Oh, that's right.
In a particular area that was not there. So he goes...
He realizes they walled it off, or they bricked it up.
Right. So he goes back to that house, the haunted house place.
With no kind of tools or any kind of gear or anything, and just tries to climb up it's such
climbs
an
up
idiot.
the wall and punches like a hole in the wall.
And drops everything by accident. It's so useless.
It was a very like Benny Hill sort of moment of just like weirdness, and on top of that, the Goblin music is just
amped up.
Yeah, it's just amping up like the somewhat comedy of the whole thing. But he eventually like finds a way to get into the
secret room
from the inside, and there's a mummified body in there. And
with a Christmas tree full of cobwebs.
Right. And then like I wouldn't say out of nowhere, but then I guess like, as he's trying to piece things together, his buddy Carlo shows up, and he's like, it was me, and he has a gun.
Yeah.
And he's like, I told you to leave this whole thing alone.
Yeah.
I told you to get out of town, and you shouldn't be messing with this, and this is what's going to happen. And then I guess around the same time, the police show up.
We haven't seen them since the beginning.
Yeah, and I may be getting the order wrong.
It's very confusing. It's a little convoluted.
It really
towards
was
the end,
but
the important thing is that Carlos shows up, and then
he escapes. Like the police he's about to kill Marcus, and the cops show up and basically run him off. And Carlo escapes.
And in this huge comedy of errors, that's when he ends up dying, right? In the most brutally violent, unnecessary way possible.
Again, another giallo trope of like, yeah, I mean, It
was almost like Looney Tunes level. I
don't think us describing how Carlo dies could give it enough justice other than like, Jesus Christ, talk about worst like sequence of events for something to happen for somebody to die. Like
it was almost comical if it wasn't so horrifying.
It's like he won the death lottery. You know, like when they say like, hey, you should play the lotto today because you had so much luck. He had like the exact opposite.
Or you remember those, you remember that show like the 1,000 Worst Ways to Die?
Oh, yeah.
He hit like 3 of those.
Yeah. Because I guess we could just say he jumps over a fence as he's escaping the police. He's not paying attention to where he's running as he's looking back.
Yes.
Like a big, I guess like a garbage type truck, but it's more like a truck that's throwing away like large bulk like items, because there was like rebarb and like construction materials in the back, but I mean it's like a dump truck. Yeah. So he kind of gets hit by the dump truck, which there's a piece of rebarb that grabs him by the leg and is now dragging.
He just dragged down the street.
Carlo like down the street, and the 2 guys that are driving the car, they have no idea that they're dragging somebody.
Just happily chatting,
and
they drive for blocks,
and they turn the corner like at like 60 miles an hour.
It's crazy,
which is like insane. And so Carlo,
which like slams him into the curb over and over
multiple times, like in a very like Wile E. Coyote sort
yeah,
of way.
it was definitely like, oh, Bugs Bunny. Oh, yeah, here comes Wile E. Coyote with his shenanigans again. Just like,
and then
he's not dead yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
He's just like,
yeah, he's bleeding out.
Just all over the place.
And the truck guys, they just kind of come to an intersection stop. And then a car comes in and crushes.
Well, that's when the truck guys finally realize that they're dragging something behind them.
Right.
So they stop and they're like, oh no, oh my God. But then Carlo's already like sitting out on the street, and then another car comes barreling down and like squishes his head.
Yeah, like
it was so insane.
Watermelons his head.
Yeah.
Just open. And it was just like,
it was like Gallagher.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was wild.
What the hell just happened?
Yeah. It was he was so insane.
Yeah. It did all happen really fast. Like
it just kind of like, oh, you thought like, oh, you were along for this ride this whole time. It was nice and calm and kind of confusing. And now
check this out. Hold
here's
my beer.
The drop in the roller coaster. Like it was so bizarre.
Yeah, that was insane. Very impressive though, I will say.
Yeah, it was very imaginative how they did.
Good for them. And so I guess at that point Carlo is dead. Marcus is kind of like, well,
I guess that's over.
Yeah, and so pretty much you think the movie's over because it's like, oh, okay, well,
it's been 2 hours.
Yeah, and
I guess he was crazy.
Yeah, it turns out he was crazy all along. I mean, he was a drunk and he was all these things.
Sure.
But as Marcus is walking back to his flat, he keeps kind of running through his mind. He's like, no, that doesn't make sense because he's like, Carlo was with me when the murder happened, and he was like, and he heard it when it happened, and they're playing flashbacks of the movie, and so he's like, no, that doesn't make sense.
He can't have been the killer.
Yeah,
at least for Helga's.
Right, and so he goes back to Helga's flat because he's trying to remember. He's like, wait a minute, like I'm trying to remember when I was here at the beginning. Or when her death happened.
Right.
And he's going back through his steps and he realizes something that you actually saw that I didn't see at the very beginning.
I did. And to be perfectly honest, I remembered that scene from some other show that they were talking about it. So it was kind of in the back of my mind. And then when I saw like the one frame of it, basically in the beginning, it kind of jogged my memory and I'm like, oh, there's something there. And what it ends up being is he's walking down the hallway, this hallway full of paintings of creepy faces, very Clive Barker.
Yeah, really cool.
And then there's like a little hallway that turns to the left where there's a mirror facing him that's also reflecting another painting opposite it.
Right.
And it's like all of the paintings are all faces, creepy faces. So I don't think he thinks twice about it. I think he assumes that it's also a painting. What it turns out to be is reflecting a painting, but there was somebody hiding kind of in plain sight.
Right.
Amongst the faces.
Who had just killed Helga at the beginning.
Right. And so it like flashes back to him realizing like, oh, wait, there was something here. But now it's not here. And he realizes it was the killer. And then he turns around, the killer's there. I guess we should spoil. Can we spoil? I mean,
well,
it's
yeah.
like,
I mean, we've
whatever,
pretty much
60
spoiled
years
everything
old.
else. Yeah. It's not that old. It's a year older than me. The movie's 48 years old. Or 49. 48. I don't remember how old I am.
It's okay.
But yeah, so
it turns out it's Carlo's mom, and he had just been protecting her because she was doing all the murdering, I guess.
Right. Which we get a flashback.
And we're not sure. Did she ever say why? She was just crazy, right?
She was just crazy.
Yeah, so she was crazy, just killing people. I think she started with Helga because Helga like almost called her out on being a murderer.
Right.
And then it just kind of escalated from there.
Right.
Because Marcus was finding out more and more stuff about what was going on. But it's revealed that she was the one that killed. So much
father.
Backstory.
Yeah.
So in the very first scene when there's a murder of a guy, she was the one that actually it was her that killed her husband.
Right.
In front of Carlo, who was since then had been messed up, and that's why he was an alcoholic.
Yep.
And crazy and all of that.
Yeah.
So
she was just.
It was very convoluted story.
Right. Well, but that leads up to the final fight, though.
Oh yeah.
Which is the second most like infamous scene of the movie.
Right.
Where Carlos's mother is duking it out with Marcus.
Right.
And through all of that, she's got like, I guess like some sort of big,
she's kind of almost like a medallion.
Yeah, it's like a very
super long necklace.
Yeah, it's a big Flavor Flav sort of kind of
like the chain is super. It's pretty wide, not like Flavor Flav wide, but pretty.
It's pretty big though. It's big
pretty
enough,
ornate.
It's pretty big enough to get caught into
an elevator,
like like an old school lift that's got the open gate.
Yeah,
and sort of like where you got to actually pull the lever.
Yeah, so she gets stuck while they're scuffling. And then Marcus has the brilliant homicidal idea to press the down button. So it basically ends up decapitating her.
Yeah.
It was so violent.
Yeah.
It was so extreme. And then roll credits.
Yeah. And it just kind of
insane.
ends. And it's the.
I mean, just imagine like him having to explain that to the cops. Like, I just killed this old lady.
Oh, by the way, this happened.
Yeah, definitely not suspicious.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
But that's deep red.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in.
It was a lot. I will, like I said, I liked it. I think it was good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could have liked it better if the pacing wasn't so kind of off and on.
I'm with you. I would want to go back and watch the non-director.
Theatrical. Yeah, I think maybe if it was edited down better in that direction, it would maybe be more enjoyable. I think 2 hours of the misdirection and the random scenes were a little much.
Yeah, no, it is quite a bit. But I don't know. I think, it's like 22 minutes that's cut out. So like, puts the movie at almost a good hour and a half. Or
it was fun though. I didn't hate it. It was 40. Just kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it definitely was really all over the place in terms of the misdirections and the things like that. But man, I tell you what, that Goblin score is just
pretty rad.
Fucking epic.
Pretty rad.
It's so
I would
good.
say watch it just for that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think if you're a movie nerd, I think it's worth it. If you're in the right mood, or if you're with friends that are up for this style of movie, or if you have your movie friends that are up for this. But I would probably say like, yeah, watch this if you want to understand what giallo is. But I think if you want to watch, and maybe we'll do this sometime down the road. But I feel like Tenebrae is like the, I don't know. Bird with the Crystal Plumage is the first.
I still haven't watched that. That's the first one he did.
That's the first one he ever did. And I don't know. I feel like Tenebrae, because of the Goblin score and just like
that crazy crane shot.
Oh man, that fucking shot. Although this movie had a lot of great.
I love the wide shots in this movie, like with the plaza and all of those scenes were pretty cool. But yeah, Tenebrae had some pretty nice. Pretty nice ones.
This had really like unnecessarily cool shots.
Yeah.
I mean, but I love that about Argento, is that he takes the time for, like, there was a shot in the plaza that's like, it starts high and it just sort of comes low on a crane.
Yeah, it's crazy good.
It's like
gorgeous.
Completely unnecessary, but absolutely necessary. Like, it's just good. Because
it was almost
like
was almost a flex more than anything else.
There's a lot of flex in this, and there was even like one shot when he's with the professor guy or the person, and they're reenacting, or they're reworking through the problem of reworking through the murder, and there's like a long camera pullback that's really cool, and just again like excessive but cool. Yeah. There's so many of those in this movie that I like, just from a pure movie nerd standpoint. Like, I think that it's worth watching that. I'd probably say this is like a movie that I would love to watch in a theater if it was not the director's cut and just but an old cinema, right?
Like art house.
Yeah, like an art house cinema, like Texas Theater or something like that. I think would be really cool. But yeah. So it was a spicy meatball of a movie, as the Italians say.
No, they don't say that.
So how do we pair this with something that we would have eaten? And I feel like, I'm not going to say that it wouldn't be wrong. But I feel like, we had meatball subs for dinner as we were.
Okay. So super coincidentally, because we were supposed to make that meal for friends, and then I ended up not feeling so good yesterday after all, so we just made meatball subs today. Yeah. So it definitely was not, we didn't make that meal because of this movie.
No, we just needed to make that food.
We just wanted meatballs. We didn't want it to go to waste. Yeah, we just want to make meatball sandwiches, to be honest. But I gotta say, just trying to think through so I have like different layers of thinking about this movie. Because the first thing that comes to mind, honestly, more than even food, because I couldn't really think clearly of what kind of food I would pair with this movie. So when they started talking about jazz a lot, I actually started thinking more of cocktails, like kind of like the Prohibition era stuff, Sidecar, French 75, that kind of stuff. Sure. A lot of gin, which I don't actually drink because it's gross. Yeah, I don't like that. But that kind of flavor of like 1920s, like that's what I thought of. As much as we're not big cocktail people, I think it's like important in the food industry to be kind of at least semi-versed in that stuff.
That makes sense.
So that's what I thought of first, and then kind of just thinking more about like, okay, Prohibition era, there's a lot of like, that's when there was a lot of diversity that was starting to come up in America. But it was still definitely very segregated and very like people just trying to make it on their own and just trying to do what they had to do. It's still very much like, oops. It's still very much like kind of everybody on their own, just trying to make it. So it was still, I don't know. I know that like history books, at least in school, always refer to it as a melting pot.
Sure.
But back then it was still just like a mosaic more than anything else, because not everybody had become fully integrated into like an quote unquote an American culture. Everybody was kind of sticking to their little tribes and villages and things like that. So when you think about the turn of the century, it's a lot of like, the Chinese immigrants, the Italian immigrants, all of the immigrants coming from all over. So I feel like a little bit of a cop-out because we did Italian meatball subs today, but I totally would go with Italian meatball subs for this viewing, just thinking about if I wanted to go with that same theme of like jazz age America. Now, granted, this was an Italian movie, but to tie it into Italy, like thinking about Italian immigrants during that time period, what they were making do with like, they were still making spaghetti. They were still making meatballs from the home country, whatever. So it's still, I think, with like a nice little, I don't know, like what are they called? Like different little jazz cocktails, but still have like a big old bowl of like spaghetti and meatballs, honestly. Because I feel like it feels like such a cop-out because it's an Italian movie. And it feels like the easy answer, honestly, which I kind of hate. I like to kind of throw little curveballs in there, but I think kind of historically in my mind that makes the most sense.
Sure.
Because if nothing else, the only other thing I could think of was like, this is another curveball. All of the places that they showed reminds me a lot of like traveling. And I'd love to go to Italy someday, and I would love to see that giant plaza someday. So it made me think of the airport, and what's in the airport? Cinnabon. So those are my two answers.
Okay. No. I think that's actually
Super.
good.
Both the answers feel kind of dumb, but
Well, no. So I'll piggyback a little bit off of that because it did make me. So this is what I'll say because I feel like, I don't know. I think we have friends that are very also like cinephiles and appreciate this sort of film, but in a strange way, it did remind me of our trip to Japan because I think there's a certain sect of people in Japan that appreciate film like this and see it for the art value
totally.
that it is. And so when you say stuff like that, it does make me think like, okay, I could see what you're saying of having like, partly because this actually happened to us sort of, kind of, but we went into a jazz bar when we were in Japan.
We did when we were in,
and it was a very
Kyoto. Was it? Were we in Kyoto
Yes.
when we did that?
Yes.
Just kind of stumbled into one.
We stumbled into one, and it was very like what you're describing in that there was actually jazz music being played.
It was awesome.
There was just a wall of cocktails.
Lots of really high end whiskey.
Right.
Yeah.
And I could see if a place like that served food, that they actually probably would serve like a sort of meatball sort of
Little appetizer, little bites, maybe, yeah.
partly because like I remember when we were there that like Italian food actually was very popular in Japan.
Yeah. And they
so-
were kind of doing their own spin on it at the
Right.
same time.
So I can kind of
is
see what you're saying in that style. So it's like, okay, like Japanese like sub or Japanese meatballs, but made in Japan with like Kobe beef and like
Oh God, super high end.
Yeah, very high. Well, because if the Japanese are going to do it, they're going to do it right.
Yeah.
And so, but it would also be in that jazz bar with really nice,
Super like classed up,
Right.
little small bites, so it's not messy, but still super tasty.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Everything's very, organized and whatnot. I could see a version of that for this. So that's not what I'm just throwing that as to paint a little bit more of a picture of what you were picking, because for me, I also had this was a challenge in trying to think like, well, what does it make me think? Or this kind of goes back to another one that I've done before, which is more like if I was watching this and it was just me, or if I was like picking out what we were going to kind of eat. This, for whatever reason, and maybe partly because Italian blood is so like vibrant red. It's always like
in the movies.
Yeah, it's almost like neon red a lot of the times.
in these giallo types.
Yeah, especially for Argento, like his red is
it's almost,
his blood red is all it's
bordering on pink in some lights. Honestly,
it's
just super.
It's very neon.
Yeah,
like it's very bright, and it's not. I think it adds to sort of the fantasy world of like none of this is real.
Definitely not subtle. Yeah.
But I'm going to use it excessively. But I would probably for this one.
Was it Tenebrae where it just sprayed it all over the wall?
Yeah.
Nuts.
It's excessive in that one too.
Nuts.
But in this case, I think actually maybe because of the investigative aspects of this again, and I don't want to do exactly what I did with another one, but one of the other movies that we've talked about, but for whatever reason, this did make me think of like a Mediterranean like chicken shawarma, and I'm trying to remember the name of the bread. It's not the pita bread, but there's like a bread that we've been introduced to recently.
Oh, at that new place.
Yeah, at the Royal.
Where it's kind of crunchy.
Yeah,
Royal.
Royal.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Royal shawarma, I think.
Royal shawarma or something like that. But it's like a particular like Mediterranean bread that they use. So it's like kind of like a wrap bread, but it is a little different. But all of that because they do have like what's called a volcano sauce, which is a very hot, like red.
Like a yogurt sauce?
Well, it's a red sauce. It's spicy and it almost looks like Italian blood. Is part of the reason why I think it.
That's so funny.
But it's really good, that's
awesome.
But I feel like again, it's another handheld sort of meal because I would have notes in one hand.
Yeah, you're still investigating.
Kind of like I was tonight.
Totally.
I was writing notes as we're like watching the movie.
Yeah.
Because I was also trying to figure out like, well, who could it actually be? But
who could it be?
So like a chicken shawarma, I think I would actually probably do meat though. Like I'd probably do like a beef shawarma instead with a hot volcano sauce that's like a very bright red, and probably some steak fries to kind of go with it. Very greasy, paper wrapper.
Oh, so good.
Would have to be for this one, I think.
Yum, yum, yum.
Even though it's not as Italian, even though, what's that?
No, I can kind of see it because it kind of wraps back up to like.
There's something spicy about this movie. Like, I don't know. And
well, it makes me think too, like you're investigating stuff and you're kind of pretending you're like a detective or a cop. And yeah, you just want something to go that's handheld because you're busy. You're in your car probably like staking someplace out.
Yeah, there's something
it
about
kind of feels New York also.
It kind of does, but it has, and I think that's part, like there is like an aspect, and I think noir plays has a huge influence on giallo films. I mean, just the big shadows, you know, the way the lighting is very like angular and purposeful, so that you can see like the killer shadow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know. There's just something that makes me think about like that type of spice kind of feels like this, even though like it's kind of funny because. Like I agree with you with like the meatball like sort of subs could go with this, but I still like think that there has to be a fair amount of like spiciness or something that kind of comes through. It's got to have a lot of flavor.
Can see that
in order to go to a movie like this, because I feel like this movie has a lot of flavor. Like it has a lot of big elements, and it's not one of those like I don't know. Like there's just something about the way it moves. And even though it was confusing at times, like and again, probably in a revisit, I'm sure we would sort of sort through it a little bit better. But it's one of those things where it's like it's complex, but at the same time, it's not. Like it's somewhat straightforward. And I feel like when you get a chicken shawarma sandwich, and especially I don't know, maybe shout out to like Royal Shawarma that just opened up nearby our house.
Makes me hungry.
Yeah, their sandwiches are really like delicious and tasty, but they're really like pretty and wrapped, and like it's just
it's super.
It's organized and very like
tidy.
Yeah, but then when you bite into it, you're like, oh man, this has got like a lot of stuff, a lot of layers, a lot of flavors, a lot of things happening, and I feel that's kind of like deep red, right? Like it's got a lot of stuff happening, and when you hit like those notes. It's like, you know, like with the two big moments, especially the fucking mannequin thing, which is just insane. I don't know. That would be like a super hot pepper that you kind of just come across. Like, oh man, I'm just going to have to
just power through it
and kind of get through it. But that sounds like
it's making me hungry.
It sounds like a good pairing. I would probably say though, this one's not a chef special for me, but it would be
I agree.
I would definitely say like, hey, you really should give this a
I think I would dust off this menu every once in a while when I'm feeling like, ooh, you know what we haven't had in a while. Little bit of deep red.
Yeah, I think. I would agree. I feel like,
but not a constant rotation.
Probably. No, I think you'll get a lot of heartburn. I think if you watch it a little bit too much. But some people like that, you know, like some people love
they want the pain.
They'll want that flavor, that flavor tone or whatever they call it. So, but we did it.
We done did it
without throwing. What's her face under the bus anymore?
Oh my god!
Than we already did with the, you know, yeah. She's like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Michael.
I go to America, Michael.
And then the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Oh well, all right. Let's get our doggy bags. Let's get our stuff wrapped up for the evening, and
I gotta wash all those dishes.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll have to see. I think we need to get around to a few other movies that are going to be additional challenges as well. But yeah, that was a good Italian movie, as our hero of the drive-in would say, Mr. Joe Bob Briggs, the Italian,
the patron saint
of the drive-in. Is that was one spicy meatball Italian movie. So, well, all right. Let's put away the menus. Let's put away the leftovers, and let's hit the road. I guess we'll talk to everybody next time.
Bye.